Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to show you how to install Windows 11 on your unsupported computer. I'm going to be using a Dell Inspiron 17R 5721. This is a dual-core i7 from around 2012. It has 8 gigabytes of RAM, and the only upgrade that I've done to it is I've installed an SSD in place of the hard drive that came with it, which I would highly recommend if you plan on doing this upgrade yourself. There are SSDs for as cheap as $20, or you could spend a bit more if you want higher performance or more capacity. This is a 240 gig drive, and it's perfectly sufficient for most people, and you can get ones like it for around $20 on Amazon. First thing we're going to do here is we've got Chrome open. We're going to go to Microsoft's official Windows 11 download page here. We're not going to download the installation assistant or the media creation tool. We're going to go down here to download Windows 11 disk image for 64 devices. What we're going to do is we're going to select Windows 11 Multi-Edition ISO and click Confirm. It'll validate our request, and then we're going to pick our language. I'm in the United States, so we'll click English United States. Click Confirm again. Obviously, if you're in a different country or you speak a different language, you could pick whatever language you want from that list, and it will give you a download link here. In this case, so we're going to go ahead and click download, and it will download an ISO file to your computer. And while that's going, we're going to search for the other tool that we're going to need, which in this case is, sorry, I've just bumped the camera there. Anyway, we're going to search for a tool called Rufus, which is a USB writing tool that you write Windows images or Linux images to a USB drive so you can boot from it and install it. Similar to how you would burn a disk image to a DVD back when you would boot off of an optical drive. And it has a few special functions, including the ability to bypass Windows 11 system requirements. So we're going to go down the download here. We're going to click the portable version. That way you don't have to install anything. You don't have to be running Windows 11 to download this tool. This system's already running Windows 11, so that's easier for me. But it can, of course, be Windows 10 or even Windows 7 will work. So what we're going to do is going to open up Rufus. While that download goes for Windows 11, we're going to find a USB drive to use. It needs to be 8 gigs or larger, and it can be any speed of flash drive. A USB 2 drive would fine, but a USB 3 drive will obviously deliver faster installation times, but a USB 2 drive will work fine. You'll just have to wait around longer. You will want to make sure that it's a quality USB drive from a known brand like Kingston or PNY or ADATA or Samsung, or any quality USB drive will do. And you can also use an external hard drive like this one, if that's all you have laying around. You could see on the label, this is a 160 gig drive, but it can be whatever size drive you want, as long as it's 8 gigs or larger. Although it's worth noting that if your system uses a legacy BIOS, which this method of installation can support, you won't be able to use a drive, a USB drive, as for your installer that's over 2 terabytes, because some BIOSes have trouble booting from drives that large, and I've even seen some that won't boot from a drive larger than 160 gigs. So if you have weird issues when booting, make sure to get a drive that's between 8 and 32 gigs, and that's usually a good bet for system compatibility. Although you have to go out of your way to find anything smaller than a 32 gig drive these days. So as you can see, our download has progressed slowly here, has about 13 minutes left. Well, while that goes, I'm going to show you the options you're going to need to press. They actually won't appear until the download's finished, so we'll let that finish. Okay, so the ISO file finished downloaded, but before we go ahead and write it to our USB drive here using Rufus. We're going to run through the system requirements once again to ensure that your computer can run Windows 11. As you can see here, we're going to need a 64-bit CPU that supports SSD 4.2. This is any Core i3, i5, or i7. It also includes most Pentiums from 2011 or newer, as well as any Celeron or Atom 2011 or newer. But you're going to want to check your specific model of CPU, which you can find by holding down Control, Shift, and Escape. We're going to the Performance tab in Task Manager and clicking CPU, and both Windows 11 and Windows 10 will display the model number of your CPU right here. And while you're in here, you can go to Memory and check that you have at least 2 GB of memory installed. On some systems, it's possible to upgrade it if you don't have enough, but given that your system is already running Windows 10, it likely has at least 2 GB of RAM installed. And another thing that you might want to do is you're going to want to go to Control Panel, System and Security, and then Backup and Restore Windows 7. And you're going to use this utility to create a system image of your current system if you care about any of the data that's on it, because installing Windows 11 on an unsupported computer will wipe it using the method that we're using here. There are potentially methods that you could use to perform an in-place upgrade on Windows 11 on your unsupported computer, but those tend to be a bit hit or miss and are a lot more complicated to pull off. So I figured for the average person who wants to get a few more years out of their existing hardware, that this would be the simplest method to use. You can, and if you want to keep your data like your passwords, you can look up how to do that for what browser you have. Chrome and Firefox will let you export them to a CSV file, which you could save on a USB drive or to the cloud or something. Just make sure you don't forget your login. And the same can be said for any photos or videos you might have. You could save them to a USB drive or a network drive if you have one of those, or if you're on a desktop and you have multiple drives, you can save it to a secondary drive. Just make sure that it's not on the drive that you're installing Windows to, because it will be wiped as part of this process. So now what we're going to do is we're going to plug in our USB drive. You can see this is actually a 32 gig SD card and a Transcend USB reader, but you can use, of course, a regular USB drive or anything like I mentioned earlier. Kind of plug it into a USB port. If your system has USB 3, I'd recommend using a USB 3 port for faster speeds. As you can see here, it shows up here in the top of the Rufus window as a 32 gig drive. As you can see here, we're going to go to boot selection. We're going to select our ISO. You can see it's in the downloads folder here. We're going to click continue, and you're going to want to make sure that it's on standard Windows installation. And if your computer uses UEFI, which any hardware 2012 or newer, especially anything that comes with Windows 8 or newer from the factory, will have UEFI support. You're going to want to select GPT. If you're on an older system that supports BIOS mode only, we often call this legacy mode, you're going to want to select MBR, and it will see the target system will change to BIOS or UEFI-CSM. But this is a UEFI capable system, so we're going to do UEFI non-CSM. Because here you can enable runtime UEFI validation if you want. This will basically ensure that your USB drive isn't corrupted when you boot the Windows installer. And then we're going to click Start. And as you can see, a menu will appear. We want to make sure that we check at least this top box here, for which removes the artificial RAM requirements, the requirements for secure boot and TPM 2.0, as well as we're going to remove the requirement for an online Microsoft account. And You can also do disable data collection, which will skip the privacy settings during setup. You can also set the regional options. We're going to do that, but you don't have to do this. And I'd highly recommend disabling BitLocker automatic device encryption unless you understand what disk encryption is and you want this turned on, because it can be problematic on some systems, especially those that don't have a trusted platform module. And you can also have it automatically create a local account with a username you enter here. We're just going to type in test user for this video here. And we're going to click OK. It's going to warn us that the contents of our USB drive that we connected will be wiped. It's going to erase everything on it. So if you have anything important on it, make sure it's saved to another USB drive or a network drive or something. Just as long as it's not the main drive of your computer or the USB drive, because they're both going to get wiped as part of this process. I'm going to click OK. As you can see, it's going to go through all the work of creating our customized Windows 11 installer. We're going to let this run through, and I'll come back when it's finished. As you can see, our USB drive has finished being created. You see here it says ready, which means it's okay to use it. So we're going to go ahead and restart. If your system won't let you pick anything other than update and restart, you can just hold down the system's power button until the screen goes black, and then you can turn the system back on. It doesn't matter because we're going to wipe this Windows install anyway. I'm just going to choose regular restart, and you're going to want to press the key to get to the boot menu on your specific computer. On this computer, which is a Dell, it's normally F12, so we're going to mash F12 here. Who's that guy in the reflection? I'm going to press F12 here for boot options. And we're going to select Enter Setup. What we're going to do here is we're going to go to Secure Boot Mode, or just Secure Boot, and we're going to turn it off. But because given that Rufus has modified this Windows image to bypass the system requirements, it won't be able to pass the Secure Boot of validation. If your system has a setting for SATA operation, set it to AHCI or SATA. Don't set it to ATA here because you will get worse performance. And leave everything else alone unless there are specific settings that you want to change. Make sure external USB ports are enabled. It should be enabled already because you've already written the USB drive. So we're going to click Save and Exit. And we're going to hit F12 again to bring up the boot menu. If you're on a different brand of computer, the keys will be different. You're going to want to look up on your phone or whatever which key it is to enter the boot menu or the BIOS setup if you need to disable Secure Boot. Now, as you can see here, under UEFI boot, you should see something like USB or the brand of your flash drive or something here. It shows up as EFI USB 1 Path 1 on this Dell system, but your system could be different. We're going to press Enter. And we're going to wait for the system to boot up. You can see you saw Rufus come up for a second. And we're going to be stuck on this screen with the computer manufacturer's logo on it. Depending on the speed of your USB drive and your computer, you could be stuck at this screen for a while before the logo starts to appear. As you can see, this is a fast USB drive. Here it's USB 3 drive, so it will work rather quickly. If you can't get your system to boot, make sure that you're using a USB drive that comes off of your motherboard on a desktop or from the front panel. USB ports connected to external controllers, if say you added USB 3, tend to not be able to be booted from by your firmware, so make sure you're using a motherboard USB port if you're on a desktop system. As you can see here, the setup page has appeared. It looks just like normal. This is the official Windows 11 installer. We're going to click Next, select our keyboard as US, and we're going to agree that everything will be deleted, and we're going to select Install Windows 11. if you're on an unsupported system and you need to perform any kind of boot repair, if something was to go wrong either during the install or later, say if an update were to fail, you can click this button here and use the recovery options. I'm going to click next again. So while this screen goes by, we're going to hold down shift, we're going to press F10. And as you can see, a command prompt window will appear. I'm going to type in disk part. I'm going to select list disk. As you can see here, disk 1 here is our USB drive. This number will be different. If you have trouble figuring out which drive is which, if your system has multiple drives, I'd recommend disconnecting them if they're external, and if possible, disconnecting them if they're internal. If you can't tell which one it is, the easiest way to tell is before you reboot from your current Windows install and go to setup, you can check the size of your C drive, and you want to find the drive in here that is closest to that size here in this disk part list here. As you can see here, 223 gigabytes is the SSD. It's the only internal drive in the system, except for the DVD drive. So we're going to type in select disk 0, and then we're going to type clean. And what that does is it scrubs the drive of all data, it puts it in a brand new state, so we can install Windows 11 on it without issue. As you can see here, it's asking for a product key. If you have a Windows 11 product key, if you bought a retail copy, you can type it in here. But since we did an online install and we're using the free upgrade method, because Windows 11 is a free upgrade for Windows 10 users, we're going to select I don't have a product key, and we're going to select our version. In this case, I want Windows 11 Pro. And I recommend staying away from the N versions because they tend to be missing some features such as the camera app, which you probably want. We're going to select Windows 11 Pro. If you have a specific need for Pro Education or Pro for Workstations, you can select that, but we're just going to use Pro version since that comes with the extra features that power users like me will appreciate, such as remote desktop connection. You can remote into the machine, as well as a couple other features. You see here, we're going to click accept on the agreement. Always read those, of course. Now it's going to be searching for disks. As you can see here, we're going to remember that disk number from earlier, disk 0. As you can see, it's configured as unallocated space, and that's what we want. We want to make sure that we're selected disk 0, and then we're going to click next. And Windows will automatically partition the drive according to your system's needs, and it'll bring up this checklist to ensure that we're doing what we want, which we do. We want to install Windows 11 Pro, so we're going to click install. And now it's going to go through the installation process automatically, just like it would on an officially supported system. And it says here that it might take a while and your PC may restart several times. So we're going to let this run through. As you can see, the Windows install has completed successfully. We are now booted into our Windows 11 installation here. You can see here that it has test views at the top, just like we configured in Rufus. There was no setup process when Windows first started because we already pre-configured that with the Rufus bootable USB utility. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make sure that we have all of our drivers. Because as you can see, our 2-finger scroll for our trackpad isn't working, and there's no transparency effects, and the mouse is kind of laggy, which would indicate that we don't have any video drivers. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that Windows Update is running. We're already connected to a network, because I'm plugged in with Ethernet here, although if you had a Wi-Fi connection, you'd obviously want to go ahead and connect. It should find the driver automatically. And now it's going to download all all of the drivers for our mouse, our graphics. This has Intel HD 4000. And it's also going to grab an updated driver for our Wi-Fi here. Windows is pretty good at figuring out automatically. But if it can't figure it out automatically, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to open a web browser. And you're going to want to download the drivers for your specific machine. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Dell Inspiron 17R5721, because that's this a particular computer's model number. And we're going to go to Dell's support page, where we can find the drivers to download. We're going to go to Find Specific Drivers, and if it offers you a choice for operating system, you're going to want, and you don't have Windows 11 as an option, you're going to want to click Windows 10. The Windows 10 drivers will work just fine. And the main drivers you're going to want here are trackpad and graphics, as well as audio. As you can see, we're going to download the Intel HD graphics. If you have AMD graphics, you're going to want to go to AMD's website and download those to ensure you get the latest version. But we're going to go ahead and grab our graphics drivers, and we're going to install those so we can get the full graphical transparency effects in the taskbar. And I'm also going to go ahead and plug in our computer because our battery is getting kind of low. It's recommended to have the battery connected. See here, yeah, we're down to 35%. So we're going to go ahead and click open, and it should install this driver automatically. It is normal for the fans to be running pretty hard during setup, considering that our CPU usage is still quite high as we're still working through the Windows and installer. This isn't the fastest computer in the world. I'm going to go ahead and select yes at the UAC prompt. And we're going to go ahead and click install. I'm also going to open up a device manager to see any other drivers that we may be missing. You can see here we're missing the drivers for a card reader, some unknown device, and a PCI simple communications controller. As you can see here, Windows has already grabbed our display drivers. You can see this is Intel HD Graphics 4000. And all our other stuff seems to be here, so we're going to have to download. As you can see, we're going to click no because our drivers are already installed. And we're going to download our card reader driver. Make sure that we get full card reader functionality. And you don't really need the management engine interface driver. Honestly, kind of better off leaving that off because there's a potential point of entry for security. But if you need the management engine, you can, of course, download that. And you don't have to download these help and support applications either. But you can download them if you want, but they could potentially slow down your system if they're particularly resource heavy. We're going to go to System Settings. And we're going to ensure that, I'm going to show you that we have Windows 11. You see here this Windows 11 Pro 24H2. Installed it today on September 20th. All our hardware is detected, 8 GB of memory. Our system shouldn't be activated because we'd have. Oh, it is active. Because if your system has a Windows key for Windows 8 or newer embedded in the system firmware for the version that you selected, it will automatically apply the license. You see here it says Windows is activated with a digital license because I've installed Windows Pro on this system before and it saved that key. I guess it saved that key. That's the only way it could have gotten activated. Because when We're obviously not using any kind of crack or anything. This is the official installer. All this USB drive does is bypass all the hardware restrictions. But yeah, if your system has a hardware license for the version you installed, it should activate automatically. And that'll be it. Be sure to comment down below if this guide was useful, and tell me what hardware you installed it on. One more thing I'd like to note for you is that if you're on a Mac, an Intel-based Mac, since you didn't use the Boot Camp utility, you're gonna have to download Brigadier and go through that process to get all your Apple drivers installed, because Apple systems typically don't have all their drivers detected by Windows automatically, which can be quite a pain. But if you're on any other brand of computer, it should be pretty painless. And once your Windows and stuff is settled in, the CPU usage will go down here. But that's it.